Welcome back to the shed. Today we go back to 1998 for the Hugo and Nebula award-winning novel Forever Peace by Joe Haldeman. So we've covered Joe Haldeman in the past on this channel for his Hugo and Nebula award-winning novel in 1974, The Forever War. I provided a bit of a rebuttal to some of the criticism I saw of Joe Haldeman's The Forever War, but I won't be doing that today for Forever Peace. What I will do though is provide a bit of a plot overview, talk to what I liked, what I didn't like. I'll put it to the memory test and we'll rank it on our ever-growing sci-fi shed ladder, where I've been ranking all the Hugo and Nebula award-winning novels. So although this novel shares a very similar name to The Forever War, it's actually not a sequel. It takes place in a different Earth to what we saw in The Forever War, and we have this guy called Julian Class. And Julian Class is a soldier, and he's also a mechanic. And what these mechanics do in this future Earth is remotely control these big, massive robots. And these robots are indestructible, so that the soldiers can be back at headquarters, protected from all the elements and protected from people trying to kill these soldiers down, these big robots. They call them soldier boys, these big robots. And they can do that remotely and safely, but also disconnected from the tragedy and of war that we see. So Julian doesn't normally see action. He's normally doing recon work and other type of strategic work. So he's not normally in the front line of fire. But he gets him and his platoon, so there's a combination of these soldier boys that all work together, network together, go to this village to sort of make a bit of a statement. And unfortunately, Julian happens to kill a young boy, almost accidentally, but he's so devastated by this that he actually tries to commit suicide, not being able to deal with the guilt. So Julian's girlfriend is a research physicist, and she and her boss have just made a significant discovery that if the maths actually works out, could potentially mean the end of the universe. So Julian and his group of peacemakers are trying to put an end to this experiment, but they've been hounded by this extremist religious group who want to beckon in a new universe. So they're thinking that, you know, the end of the universe is probably not as bad as we think it is, and this could beckon in a new era. So the scene is set, and what will ultimately determine the future of the universe. So look, I found it to be a pretty interesting novel. So what did I like? So I really enjoyed the concept of these big biomech, remotely operated, indestructible robots that are powered by, you control by being jacked on the back of your head, right? So I did enjoy that concept, because even in the latest conflicts that we see around the world, there's a lot more use of drones, and it sort of seems almost feasible that at some point in our history, in our future rather, we will have these big robotic, remotely controlled drones that will be able to cause havoc like they've done in The Forever Peace. So the other thing I really enjoyed is the concept of this, jack that they use to control these big robotic soldier boys, because they can also be used to network individuals together. So you can sort of share thoughts at faster than light speeds and really get immersed into the other individual's mentality, right? So you really become one almost. And I did enjoy that concept. It really did remind me of what we see in Neuromancer, which we've also got a review at some point in time on this channel to rank it on our ladder board. The other concept I enjoyed was, war and who's the ultimate beneficiary of it. Like, what's the purpose of war? Now, I did enjoy the theme, but it's, I think, a good tangent into my dislikes. So what didn't I like in Joe Haldeman's Forever Peace? Look, I just think the concept is really nothing new to what we saw in The Forever War. But unfortunately, when you try to stack these books up, it just falls short, in my humble opinion. It just doesn't have the depth that I think it was found in The Forever War. And on its own right, I think it's a decent novel, and I think it'll do okay on the shed ladder. But I just couldn't help but comparing this to The Forever War. And I think that the biggest mistake Joe Haldeman made in writing this book is titling it The Forever Peace. I think anyone coming into this is expecting something of the brilliance that I think Forever War was. And unfortunately for me, and if you're anything like me, you're going to walk away disappointed. The other thing that I found was odd, that I really couldn't get my head around, is that, in this far future, we've created these big robotic, remotely controlled drone robot things that are indestructible. But somehow we haven't thought about the fact that the remote operators could still be killed by the trauma brought in by, say the robot being shot down or someone else being killed, right? And I thought that was really weird. You'd think that they would have some kind of built-in, controls to block that stuff off so the actual remote operators will be safe. So look, there was a couple of little things like that I thought, yeah, don't know if I buy that particular concept. But look, overall, that again is just a minor little point. It didn't really take away from my enjoyment of the novel. So look, when it comes to the memory test on this one, it saddens me to report that this one, unfortunately, was a bit forgettable. I can't but help comparing them to the Forever War, and that's the biggest problem I have with this novel. I can't help but compare the two, and when it comes to the memory test, there's nothing really new here as far as themes that will make you remember this book as a standout, and unfortunately it just didn't do it for me. Forever Peace, Forever Free, which was again in the same series, just didn't have the lasting impact that the Forever War has. So I'm going to have to say that it didn't really do well when it comes to the memory test. So look, what about recommendations? Look, it is still a good read, right? I've said this so many times on this channel when reviewing the Hugo and Nebula award-winning novels, that these are all great books, right? I'm being really harsh in my criticism because I enjoyed the novel. I still rated it a good 3.5 out of 5 stars, right? So it is a very good novel and I enjoyed it. I'm just, again, preparing myself for what I need to do and rank this and trying to highlight some of the difficulties I had with this novel, comparing them to others on the list. But I still would highly recommend it to Joe Haldeman fans. If you like the Forever War, I think there is enough in this novel to make you enjoy it. I did enjoy it. I wouldn't say it was a memorable novel, but I did enjoy the read as well. And it didn't stop me reading Forever Free as well. I do want to stress that, right? It's not like I got halfway through this and I thought, why am I reading it? It did have me engaged and I did enjoy the storyline. The other recommendations, similar to what I did for the Forever War, Joe Haldeman has a very different spin to what we find in Robert Heinlein's, what was it called? Starship Troopers, right? So I think, again, I would recommend this novel to people who like Robert Heinlein's Starship Troopers, but you want to get a contrast and a conflicting view to what Robert Heinlein had, then I'd say have a read of Forever Free and Forever War. I'd probably start with Forever War, but have it a go, because I think if you liked Heinlein, I always find it good to have a weighted balance, right? To see who's, the pros and cons of both, pro-militarization versus war, what's it good for. So I think, yeah, Heinlein fans, you may want to check this one out as well. So we've got to make a big decision and rank it on our ever-growing sci-fi share ladder. So let me flip the cameras around and we'll do that just now. So back to the share ladder and ranking tonight's Hugo and Nebula award-winning novel for 1998, Joe Haldeman's Forever Peace. Now we've covered Joe Haldeman in the past on our share ladder, and he's actually, the Forever War is ranking in a top 10. I think it's 8 or 9 there on the list. So it's ranking really well. And does Forever Peace deserve a place on the A side? Because it's a very interesting novel in itself, but I don't think it's got the depth and complexity that we found in Forever War. I highly recommend you follow the link down below to see just what I'm talking about when it comes to Forever War, because I think that novel just goes so much deeper than what appears to be on face value. But I just can't say the same for Joe Haldeman's Forever Peace. So I'm going to have to say it's not going to be on the A side. Now, when comparing Forever War, when I reviewed that, and Robert Heinlein's Starship Troopers, I sort of compared the two. So maybe it's a good starting point to say, is it going to be better than Starship Troopers? And again, I would have to say no. Starship Troopers, although it's very confrontational, very controversial, and you may not necessarily agree with everything that Heinlein goes on about in that novel, I personally don't. It is, I think, a great piece of work that is just great in exposition, really good arguments that he makes pro-militarization, and it's just the pinnacle of science fiction for many people. And I can't say Forever Peace comes into anyone's top 10, right? So I can't put it above Starship Troopers. And when I look at all the other novels on the B side, I'm really struggling to see what is new in this novel. So some of the criteria I've ranked these books on in the past is, what are the themes? Do they reveal something new about humanity, something that we haven't really seen before when it comes to the science fiction or fantasy themes? And I've got to say that Forever Peace, by the same author, like the Forever War, and it doesn't really explore any new themes. So I've got to say that from science fiction or fantasy theme, it's nothing that we haven't already seen from Joe Haldeman. When it comes to the characters and the character definition, and do they reveal something again about humanity? Do they go through some great, interesting journey that we want to go on with them? I would say there are some interesting things about the characters in the novel, and they go on some interesting journeys, of self-growth. But I would say again, they're not very memorable. There's nothing that really stood out for me as warranting their place on the B-side. When it comes to the memory test, which is another criteria that's a really heavily weighted criteria, just how memorable are these novels? Again, I remember every single novel on this list far better than I do Forever Peace. It really is, for me, just overshadowed by the Forever War, and it doesn't really talk to anything new that makes me really forget this novel, right? I often forget this novel even exists. That's how much better I think the Forever War is. Which sort of takes me down to the C side of our board and working our way through it. Now, I'm not going to bore you with my whole thought-making process, but I'm going to rank Forever Peace just below A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine, and just below Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie, because I think those novels, as much as they had some things that I didn't quite gel with, the concepts were pretty cool, right? I really enjoyed the concepts. And I've got to say that Forever Peace, again, was not really quite there, right? It just didn't really explore anything new that we hadn't seen before. But I'm going to rank it above The Terminal Experiment by Robert J. Sawyer, because overall, I think that concept is still an interesting one. And I'd say that I still do enjoy Joe Haldeman's writing and his exposition more than I did what we found in The Terminal Experiment. The Quantum Rose, again, was an interesting novel, that one blend of fantasy and science fiction, and has some really good points, and I'll leave you to read my video review below. But I gotta say, I enjoyed the Forever Peace, having said everything I've said, more than I did The Terminal Experiment and The Quantum Rose and the others that follow. Look, it's an interesting novel. I do recommend it. Have a read, but I think the board will sort of tell you where the starting order of reading would be, right? It'll be towards the bottom. I would say have a go of some of these other great novels on the board, especially the Forever War, if you want to get a feel for Joe Haldeman before you handle the Forever Peace. Hey, I've been Peter. This has been Sci-Fi Shed. Do you agree? Disagree? Do you think I've completely lost my mind? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. And like always, thank you for spending some time with me in the shed.